There is a line near the top of the highest mountains on Earth. You can't see it. No sign, no marker, nothing at all. But the moment you cross it, your body quietly begins to die. Not from the cold, not from a fall, simply from being there. Around you, the view is unreal. The sky is almost black in the middle of the day, and the world curves away beneath your boots. And the whole time, a clock you cannot feel is already counting down. Climbers have a name for this place. They call it the death zone. Once you understand why it exists, you understand something deep about the limits of being human. The death zone starts at around 8,000 meters. That's about 26,000 feet. And that line isn't drawn by the terrain. It's drawn by chemistry. Above it, the human body simply cannot get enough oxygen to keep itself alive, no matter how slowly it moves or how long it rests. You are not living up here. You are running down a battery you cannot recharge. So the first question is the obvious one. Why is the air too thin at the top of a mountain? And the honest answer is not quite what most people think. Here is the part that surprises people. The air at the top of Everest has almost exactly the same percentage of oxygen as the air at the beach, around 21%. The oxygen didn't go anywhere. What changed is the pressure. Down at sea level, the entire weight of the atmosphere is pressing down on you, packing the air molecules tightly together. So every breath you take is dense and crowded with oxygen. But as you climb, there is less and less atmosphere stacked above you, so the air spreads out and thins. By the time you reach the death zone, the pressure is about a third of what it is at sea level. The oxygen is still there. There is just far less of it crammed into each breath. So you can breathe as hard as you possibly can and still slowly suffocate. Scientists have a name for this. They call it hypoxia. Low oxygen reaching the body. And the first organ to feel it is the one you need the most. Your brain. Your brain is an absolute oxygen hog. It is a tiny fraction of your weight, but it burns a huge share of your oxygen. So when the supply drops, the brain is the first thing to start misfiring. And it does not feel the way you would expect. People in the death zone don't usually feel afraid. They feel slow, confused, strangely calm. Climbers have described doing bizarre things up there. Taking off warm clothing because they suddenly felt hot. Sitting down to rest a few steps from safety. Holding long conversations with people who were not there. The cruel trick of hypoxia is that the very organ you need to recognize the danger is the organ being starved. The judge is impaired. And it gets worse because oxygen starvation doesn't just slow the brain down. It can start to physically break the body. Two conditions in particular haunt high climbers. The first is called high-altitude pulmonary edema. In plain terms, the lungs begin to fill with fluid. The body, panicking for oxygen, leaks liquid into the very air sacs that are supposed to be pulling oxygen in. So the person starts to drown, slowly, from the inside, in the middle of a frozen mountain. The second is even more frightening. High-altitude cerebral edema. This is when fluid leaks into the brain itself, and the brain begins to swell inside the skull. It brings stumbling, terrible headaches, confusion, and a loss of coordination, as if the person were deeply drunk. Both of these can appear within hours. And the only real cure for either one is brutally simple. Go down, lose altitude, get to thicker air. Everything else is just buying time. Now you might be thinking, but people do climb these mountains. Bodies adapt to all kinds of things. Why can't they just get used to it? And the answer is one of the most important ideas in all of this. Your body absolutely can adapt to altitude, up to a point. It's called acclimatization. Spend time a little higher, and your body responds. It makes more red blood cells to carry oxygen. You breathe faster, even at rest. Your body quietly reworks itself to squeeze more out of every thin breath. This is why climbers don't just march to the top. They go up, then come back down, then up a little higher, then down again for weeks, letting the body catch up at each stage. But here is the wall. Acclimatization has a ceiling, and that ceiling is the death zone. Above 8,000 meters, the air is so poor that the body can no longer adapt fast enough to keep even with the damage. You stop gaining. You only lose. Every minute up there, you are getting weaker, not stronger. You cannot acclimatize to the death zone. You can only endure it, briefly. And there is an even deeper version of this. Some people are practically born for altitude. For thousands of years, communities have lived high up in places like the Himalayas and the Andes, and their bodies have genuinely evolved for it. Some carry blood that ferries oxygen more efficiently. Some breathe a little faster without ever thinking about it. The famous Sherpa climbers, who do astonishing work at heights that flatten most visitors, aren't simply well-trained. Their bodies are tuned for thin air in ways the rest of us can't match. But here is the humbling part. Even they cannot truly live in the death zone. Their adaptations buy them an enormous head start lower down and let them work where others can barely stand. Yet above 8,000 meters, the same brutal math closes in on everyone. The line does not care how you were born. It is set by physics, not by willpower or training or heritage. It just shifts a little for the most adapted among us, and not nearly far enough. Which is why everything up there is a race against a clock. Climbers in the death zone are not strolling. They are spending a resource that is draining the entire time. This is why you hear about narrow summit windows, measured not in days but in hours. It's why many carry bottled oxygen, essentially bringing a little piece of lower altitude up with them, just to extend the clock a bit. And it's why experienced mountaineers obsess over one unglamorous rule above all others: the turnaround time. They decide, before they ever start, that if they have not reached the top by a certain hour, they turn around no matter what. Even a few steps from the summit, because the summit is only ever the halfway point. You still have to get back down, through the same thin air, with even less left in the tank, and a brain that is making worse decisions by the minute. Most serious trouble on big mountains happens on the way down, when the goal is already behind you and the body is at its emptiest. So let's come back to that invisible line. The death zone isn't deadly because it's cold, although it is. It isn't deadly because it's steep, although it is. It is deadly because of something quieter and stranger. Up there, your body is using itself up faster than it can ever recover, and the very organ that should sound the alarm is too starved to ring it. Time itself becomes the thing trying to kill you. And that's the part that sticks with me. We tend to imagine the limits of the human body as walls. Hard, obvious, dramatic. But this limit is invisible. It's just a height where the math stops working in our favor. A place that looks like the top of the world and is quietly, patiently, lethal. The mountain doesn't have to do anything at all. It just has to let you stay. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside the death zone. That the most dangerous limits are often the ones you cannot see, the ones that feel fine right up until they don't. So the next time you see a photo of someone standing on a summit, remember what it actually took to be there for those few minutes, and how fast that same place would turn on them. And the next time someone asks you what the death zone really is, and why the human body simply can't survive at the top of the world, well, then you'll know.